I could not believe what I was seeing. I could have filled the back of his head with 5.56, which is an absolute joke.
Well, it's not an ape, because if the Sasquatch was an ape, we would already have one.
What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. We have a special guest today, and our good friend the judge is joining us. So Tom, I'm going to have you introduce Alan and kick things off.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan, you and I spoke about 3 weeks ago before you went on vacation, and you had some, as I recall, I think you had 2 encounters with the topic at hand. So what I'm going to do...
Two incidents. I don't, I can't prove that they were encounters or not. So, I mean, two circumstances that were very interesting.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I understand. It's kind of difficult if you don't actually see one. So I'll tell you what, I'm just going to hand it over to you and fill us in and give us the details. And then periodically, one of us may, we may jump in with a question.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm probably like a lot of people who are into the topic that are my age, middle-aged, is we were motivated by Foggy Creek. That sort of introduced a tremendous amount of us to the drive-in. But something happened before that for me was the Lake Worth monster, which is right where we lived when I was a kid. And that just really tore up the media for locally. I know now it's ancient Bigfoot history. But at the time, I mean, it was hot news, and there's actually a fairly decent photograph, decent considering the subject, of a white squatch taken there at outside of Lake Worth. So that kind of introduced me to it, that there was this giant hairy thing running around in the swamps.
Where would this be located?
That was at the Fort Worth Nature Center, which is near Lake Worth, Texas. It's called the Lake Worth Monster. Fort Worth Nature Center is still there, and it's just an outdoor natural resources area.
Gotcha.
And my friend's parents would take us over there looking. I didn't know. I was just a kid, going out there looking for the Lake Worth Monster, because that was kind of a thing you did. And we never came across it, but I certainly remember doing that. And that was really my first introduction into there's something out there. I don't know what it is, but it sounds pretty darn scary if you're a little kid, and I guess if you're an adult too. And then you've got Foggy Creek and all those movies that hit, all the docudramas of the 70s, the ones with Peter Graves and all those kinds of things. And I remember seeing Patty on one of them, and it just, I thought, even as a kid, I thought, that's not a guy in a suit.
Hey, Alan, I'm going to jump in for a second. You caught my attention. You talk about an incident called the Lake Worth Monster, and I'm just very vaguely familiar with it on the periphery. Can you maybe go into, you said it sounded like it was quite a media event back then. Maybe kind of just fill us in a bit on what that was about.
Certainly. It was a large white, we would say large white squatch today. Not large, but all of them are large. That, full adult squatch that I believe at one time as many as a half dozen or so, maybe a full dozen, saw it after it started making appearances in the Fort Worth Nature Center. And I was just a kid, and I really haven't picked up anything on it in years. But if you Google Lake Worth monster, you'll get a ton of information. And it would just be sighted. And at one point, apparently when there was a crowd of people out there and all saw it at the same time, he threw a tire, not the rubber portion of the tire, but the tire inside, just flung it like a Frisbee at them, at the crowd. And didn't hit anybody or anything like that, but it was, rock throwing something. And then there's actually, like I said, a decent photograph, given the subject and given the era of the Lake Worth monster, so-called. And it got transferred into Goat Man and Frog Man and all kinds of, everybody started strap hanging their special needs monsters onto this poor creature. And so it's ended up in a lot of different discourses, but it's about a very, very large bipedal hairy something.
Okay. Yeah, that's I'm looking at a picture of it right now. And I'm fascinated because, it says the Lake Worth monster. I'll have to find the URL for it. Maybe I can post it on our webpage. But, I picked up a tire and threw it like a Frisbee.
From sort of the left rear of the animal.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah, that's the famous picture.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. You know what I really like about that is the fact that the media had a real different approach and treatment of the subject back then. That they treated it with as a serious topic as opposed to silly tabloid stuff like they do now.
Oh yeah, where you get the eye roll and the kind of silly face they make right before they announce the story and all that. Right. Yeah,
and I've actually seen some news media I think it was in Colorado, where somebody had, for all intents and purposes, I thought a very credible sighting. And yeah, you're right. You get the eye roll, and they're not going to, I don't know how to really phrase it. They're just not going to really hang their hat on that. They're going to distance themselves, keep it at arm's length.
Certainly, they're certainly not going to investigate it further. So, they're not going to take it on as a serious. Hey, these people saw something. Let me go out here and see what they might have seen, rather than make my little faces at the camera. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just found that very interesting. It is. All of a sudden, we went out there looking for it from time to time and things like that. I had no contact with the animal whatsoever. It's just that's an early memory. I mean, that's right there with moon landing for me. And I think at about the same time, 68, 69, somewhere in there, 70 maybe. I don't. So like I remember the moon landing, I also remember this. And I think there would occasionally be a sighting from time to time pop back up over there, but I don't know. I don't know. I just don't remember. There's a book written by actually not a terrible book, written by one of the first journalists to cover the story, and has a lot of the accounts in there and things like that. But at certain points, she decided to fictionalize some of it, and that's where it was. It is in the Texas lexicon of monster names. And then in the 70s, we were all barraged with the Peter Graves documentaries and things like that. They would come sort of docudramas. That's where I saw Patty at some point and determined that's a real, whatever it is, that's real. I don't know what that is, but that's not a man in a suit. That's an animal. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And also, it's besides just the serious treatment of the topic, some of those shows that you just mentioned, I thought some of them were really interesting, especially for the times, because there wasn't a lot of information on this topic, and that's kind of where you had to go. It was interesting how they would have Peter Graves walk up like it was a crime scene. They have all these people out there. Putting plaster in, and it was, taped off, and police, and for their little setups. But yeah, it was. I mean, they're very dated, but there's a lot of good details, and there's a lot of accounts, and they actually dressed up a monster a lot better than they did in more recent series. And I think kept the mystery and the fear there a little bit too.
Well, that's exactly right. And Texas actually has a long history of these creatures.
Yeah, we do. I'm here in West Texas, and we talked about some of the West Texas sightings earlier. But of course, the Foggy Creek being the closest and most famous of the sites, and that sort of straddles both sides of the state line right there. That you got, when I was a kid, I thought that there was just one, and he lived in the Pacific Northwest, because I didn't understand biology or anything. I didn't know they couldn't live 100 years or 150 years or anything like that. So I just assumed when I would watch Foggy Creek, for example, that was a different kind of monster entirely. It wasn't until much later in my childhood, when I was reading John Green in the library and, some of the other nonfiction books that I would manage to get my hand on in sometimes bookless West Texas. It was that's where, wow, there's a lot of these. This isn't one thing making its way, zigzagging all over the nation. And so
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I, for years, that's what I thought as well. Oh, there's one of these things. I guess the North America has its own single, abominable snowman. Well, it's abominable snowmen, and there's a lot of them. Yeah, we get a lot of reports out of Texas. I think the Big Thicket is one of them.
Oh yeah.
So continue on. You tell us a little bit about the we'll call them experiences that you had. I think one of them you were hunting or camping.
And I don't want to make any claims as to what they were. They were certainly interesting. And one of them at least very frightful. But you said the Big Thicket, and it's important for people not in Texas to realize the Big Thicket is a geographic region of Texas. Now, there's a national forest called the Big Thicket. Well, that's actually just a small part of the Big Thicket. The Big Thicket is really all of Northeast Texas. That whole, from Huntsville, I know that doesn't mean anything, but north of Houston up. That's a geographic. It's like the Rio Grande Valley. We call it the Valley. East Texas is the Big Thicket. That's just the name for that whole region. I live out in the Llano Estacado, the Staked Plains. So that's just a regional name. And people come from out of Texas and they're looking at that one forest, and they're thinking it's right in here. Well, it certainly could be, but it's actually a much larger geographic area as a Texan. All that stuff gets pushed to the side as you grow older sometimes, and not having a childhood experience like Will did make you a believer right away. Things, boys, cars, girls, sports, all that stuff, just sort of comes into play, and you're hanging out with your friends and you're talking about girls and you're wanting a new car. Those kind of things are just the way it is. And so kind of got off that, and I really, in high school, got very rural. I was hunting constantly. If I wasn't hunting, I was camping. If I wasn't camping, I was probably reading a book or something like that. So just an enormous amount of activity within the forest line. And that's probably what led me to go into a military career, because I like that. I like being out in the woods, and I like all of that went with it. We were in high school. Me and still my best friend today. He's retired Marine Corps. I went one way, he went another, and we were out on his property, quite a ways away from where we both lived. And it wasn't a deer lease; it was just a cattle lease. And we would go. It was on the Brazos, I'll say that. And on this place on the Brazos, we would go, and we kind of had one spot we'd always go back to. And we probably did it three times every 6 months, maybe 4, depending on the weather and things like that. It was mostly a fair weather exercise. So we would go out there and, just do the camping thing, take our weapons and and just do that sort of stuff. Just same thing I did in the military, run around in the woods, with guns. So that attracted me at an early age. Anyway, we're at this one particular place, and it's a dog leg of the Brazos. And the Brazos is very low at this point, meaning you can just basically walk across it in several places. It's just standing water. It hadn't rained in a while, so we're not in any danger of flood, but we're in a dog leg section. And I hadn't thought about probably Bigfoot, nothing in years, nothing. It had, I could probably speak intelligently on it, but I wasn't into it. And it would have been very hard at that time to be into something like that because there's no computer, there's only a few books, and you tend to think you're the only person that's interested in this sort of thing, especially when you're isolated by geography. But it was, I don't know, probably midnight, getting close to midnight, and started hearing, I'm going to call them knocks, but then let me explain what I heard. What we would describe today as knocks. And it's in a pattern of threes. Bump, 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 bump. But it's metallic. I'm thinking for the first hour that's going on, I'm thinking it's just a pump jack behind us someplace. And those are those grasshopper-looking oil field things that pump the gas out of the ground, pump the oil out of the ground. They're all over the place here. I don't know how common they are where y'all are, but just called a pump jack. Just looks like a grasshopper standing there drinking in the oil, up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. And I'm thinking it's a pump jack. Just we're hearing that kind of off in the waves, but it's fairly close. It's probably once you got up above the bluff, above the flood line of the Brazos right there, I'd say it's probably 20 meters, maybe a little more. Hard to say because it's working its way through us through a ton of mesquite. Tom, as we discussed, mesquite is a weed. It's not a tree. It is a pestilence here. And though it does cook good, it does. I'll give it that. It does. It cooks excellent, but it's just like walls of undergrowth. It's like a new growth forest where you've just got that complete wall of undergrowth. Well, that stays here all year round from mesquites, unless there's a fire or something like that. But they're everywhere. You have to clear your property. I don't have a huge place, and it's a problem here. They just come right back up all the time. Anyway, so
Colonel, were these knocks being answered by perhaps another creature? Were you hearing these on either side of you, or was it coming from just one location?
Coming from one location, which would be behind us up above the flood line, and probably back through the mesquite, maybe 20 meters or so. And it was, so it would, and I'm saying or so because it's difficult to get that exact distance with all the mesquite and undergrowth that's in our way. But no, I never heard anything anyway. I just heard the one bump, bump, bump. And like I said, for the first little while, I just think it's a pump jack. And then I say something about that pump jack sure annoying or something like that. And my friend says, there's no pump jacks out here. And in hindsight, I've started thinking, and this conversation between he and I was years ago when we were catching up on it, and he was refreshing me, and I was talking to him about it and everything. What's not there is any pump jacks anywhere near this. There were no pump jacks anywhere near us on that entire lease. What there are in every Texas field are corner posts. They're everywhere. You can't step over a tree in Texas without running into an old barbed wire fence and a corner post someplace. They're just because people take down the barbed wire, they just let the barbed wire fall down, rot away with the wood, or the wood rots away, wire falls down, and the fence corners stay up, and they're metallic, they're metal, they're iron. So it occurred to me that whatever's rapping on this, knocking, is doing it on an iron corner post. That's the metallic noise I'm hearing. And again, I'm not seeing what's making this noise. I'm only hearing it. But there is no humanity out there anywhere around us. It would be very odd for someone to do that anyway. And there's no oil field equipment anywhere around us that would make that noise. But there are corner posts everywhere. I mean, old property lines and everything else. They're just all over the place. So what it was doing was, it was, because mesquites aren't trees, they're weeds, they can't be wrapped on. There's nothing really, I mean, it's just like a big bush, basically. There are, you're going to have scrub oak and some live oaks around water, but there was nothing that big, nothing big enough to make any kind of sound like that.
What did it sound like? Did it sound like it was being struck by another metal object, another metal fence post?
No, just hearing one metal to it. I'm not hearing a double clang or anything like that.
Okay.
So if you had an axe handle and you were out beating on a corner post.
Gotcha.
Rather, as opposed to if you had a hammer and were beating on a corner post, because you'd have that ring.
Sure.
And all I'm hearing is the iron sound, the metallic sound of it, and just once, not twice with a hammer or anything else would be hitting it. So it's anyway. So there's that, and we're, and I remember we talked about that for a little while, and then we're teenage boys, so something else comes up, that you just jump onto when you're teenage boys, and downstream from us. And it's downstream. It's like I said, the Brazos was pretty dry at this time of year, very dry. Not long after that, I hear barking. I start hearing barking. Now, it's not uncommon in rural areas for dogs to pack up at night. Country dogs that run loose, form their own little army and run around at night chasing rabbits and everything else. The thing is, those all sound different. I mean, if you've got, let's say, 10, 15 dogs, rural dogs, you're going to get 10 or 15 different voices. I mean, one of them's going to be a German Shepherd, one of them's going to be a mutt, one of them's going to be, and they're not going to sound exactly the same. And what I was hearing was a uniform bark. And I'm using bark because I don't know what else to say. But there was a lot of it. And so I picked up my HK91, put a round in the chamber, and started walking that way. And my friend just stayed there at the camp, and I was just going to go check it out because I didn't know. And I knew it wasn't coyotes, and certainly wasn't foxes, because all those are extremely easy to tell. But a lot of things were barking down the river from us. And it's probably 100 meters, 150 meters down. And it's right in front of me on the left side of me as I'm walking downstream. So it's on my left, off my left shoulder, in all that scrub is where all this barking is going on. And it's right there, but I can't see anything. I mean, it is right on the lip of the flood line there. And the river dog legs again here. And I don't want to send everybody through all these dog legs, but the river dog legs again at this point. And I can't catch up with them. They, again, very uniform noises, a lot of them. But they keep moving ahead of me, just a bit. I move forward. And they'd move forward, and I heard nothing breaking, not the traditional, sounded like a tractor trailer pulling through the brush kind of noises. Nothing. Heard nothing. Just a lot of barking. And the only thing I could, I heard something one time, just looking through videos, trying to find a match for it, trying to find a reason why it wasn't the Sasquatch or anything like that. and I came across chimps, and they were barking. What we would, again, I'm using the word bark. I don't know what word to call it. But I'd move a few meters forward, and so would it. So would this group of barkers.
Did it sound like it was multiple, let's call it voices, or just one creature repeating itself?
No, it was several different animals.
Okay.
And it was staccato and clipped. It wasn't the bark of a dog, which, that kind of, it wasn't. It was almost like they're saying bark, bark. Very clipped. And right in front of me, I couldn't catch up with them. They were not in front of me, but up to my left and in front of me, up on the bank, in the thicket, in the mesquite.
Hey, Colonel, was it moving did it feel like it was drawing you away or drawing you into it?
It was certainly moving ahead of me. What motives it had, I cannot say, but it was certainly kept at a pace where it was staying just ahead of me, just forward of my left shoulder.
Yeah, that's not dogs. It's definitely not dogs.
So I tried to find some, but the one video I saw that had chimps barking or apes bark or monkeys bark, I don't know, something like that. But and again, I hesitate to use that word because that brings up dogs. But it wasn't dogs. It wasn't coyotes. It wasn't foxes. Let me rule out all canids.
Alan, I was jump in real quick. I was just going to mention the same thing. I was doing some reading about gorillas the other day, and them, along with some other higher primates, do make a barking sound, or what we would call a barking sound.
Yeah, this is going to sound stupid, so bear with me. Have y'all ever seen Greystoke, Lord of the Apes?
Yes.
It's probably the greatest Tarzan movie ever made.
It was excellent.
And the actor that's also in Highlander, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and it's not important, but when he's communicating, he made a very similar noise because all he speaks is gorilla, or chimpanzee rather, at the first of the movie. And the actor did a tremendous amount of work training with apes and copying their movement and everything else. But the sounds he would make were probably the closest I won't say that's it, but it was very close. But it was a clipped, one tone, quick sound.
We've heard multiple instances where these things have mimicked owls and have whistled, and even far-reaching stories where they mimic a call to a dog or something of that nature. Would you be led to conclude that they were trying to mimic? It sounded like they were mimicking a dog. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but is that the feeling you get now?
I can't say. That's a good point. I've never really thought about it like that. I've always thought that they were better ventriloquists than that. That they could make a dog. They could make a dog sound that sounded more like a dog than what these were doing, because these were making no attempt. This is almost communicative in nature.
I see.
So if I certainly didn't hear any whistles. If there were any owl noises, I did not pay them any attention at all in where I was at, because that would have been very common nighttime noise.
I'm going to jump in for just a moment. I want to say that I want to just reiterate everything that Tony just said is exactly, he took the words out of my mouth. Number one, the monotone nature of the sounds is, I've heard it with owls, and it sounded like your typical 800-pound owl, which is, of course, not typical. But it's a very monotone, and it's kind of annoying. It has a little bit of a agitated, kind of an annoying sound to it. And so mimicking is the word that came to mind.
Hey, Tom, here's my thought. In some of these cases, they do mimic. In this type of case, and I've heard this numerous times, I don't think that's a mimic. That bark type noise, that's something entirely different.
But do you think it's these creatures?
It is. It goes along with grunts and things like that, but it's not one of the mimicking behaviors.
Okay, very good.
I think it's just their noise, and them talking to each other. Whatever it was, whatever they were doing, it didn't sound like an owl. I got owls all around me in the evening here, and again, I wouldn't have paid any attention to an owl at all. Whistle might have gotten my attention, but I did not hear any whistles that I can recall. We went from the thumping, and I have no memory whether the thumping continued during this process or not. I just remember that started it. And, and after a little while, I said something about the machine, and, there's no machine out here. What is that then? And, now thumping, knocking, these are common topics for us. But this is, 1970s. So I don't know if anybody cracked those codes yet, or very much so anyway. Will, you were around the Four Horsemen, so you were probably in tune to that kind of detail and data, but, I wasn't. So I didn't, just why is this not, what's going on? Why is there this noise? And then why is this other noise coming from down the river? I think your point, Tom, about being led, I don't know. I can't speak for whatever was making that noise, but I can say whatever they were doing was working because I was doing that. I mean, they had a carrot on a stick for me. I was just a natural curiosity, and I had 7.62 with 30 rounds. So,
and the reason I mentioned being led, or kind of like you said, a carrot on a stick, is a very good analogy. We've heard that time and again, and one of the guys that's been on the show in the past, Lee, has talked about in an area where he heard laughing. He said it sounded like maybe a young teenage girl laughing, and it's at nighttime. So he walks out there, and then it's a little bit further, walks out, a little bit further, walks out. Will, do you remember him talking about that?
Yeah, I do recall that. Yeah, I don't remember all the details at the moment, but he did talk about that a couple of times, actually.
Yeah, and the thought that came to mind was drawing somebody in. It's leading them in.
Well, I remember the baby cry being used. During the Plains Indian Wars, there was a process where a baby would be taken from a house and seriously injured in a tree line. Of course, the mother is going to hear that and everything's going to stop to go out and retrieve the child. That wasn't super common, but it did happen. And so I would suggest this is, a similar tactic, done in a more primitive way. But I don't know. It was just, but anyway, at some point, I just said, I'm too far away. I'm too far away from my buddy. This is not right. It just started, alarm bells, whistles, whatever you want to call it. I had a road to Damascus moment. Said, this is not where you need to be right now. And so I backed all the way back around the dog legs, came back up the river, and what I'd heard, we kind of discussed it. And then for the first time and the only time in my life, we went back to the house. Never done that before. I haven't done it in rain. I haven't done it in, you probably talked me into it if it started snowing, but no, I just couldn't have ever imagined, unless somebody got desperately hurt, ever going back to the house. That was just.
Why did you guys? What was the reason for the decision? Was it just a sense of unease, something not right?
Well, something was behind us making those noises, or had been, and something was downstream or downriver making other noises. Now, I'm not sure. I can't remember at the time if I put them together, but it was getting weird for me.
Yeah.
And we both had. I had a Colt 1911 on. I mean, we were ready for the Alamo to happen, but they were on two sides of us. Whatever they is.
When you got separated, and this thing was baiting you, if that's what it was. How far do you think you got away separated from your friend?
Well, I lost vision on him at probably 100 meters or so, because the river hooked at that point, went into another dog leg. So I probably went down another 150 meters, so maybe 250, 300 meters total away from him. You know, but the entire time I'm walking, going, what the heck is this noise? What is going on over here? Because it's loud. It's a cacophony right there in the tree line right above me, or in the brush line right above me. And I can't get to it, and it's driving me nuts. And it's at that point something went off. I don't know if it's, you know, the sense or something wasn't right. You know, when they're bluff charging, they seem to make a lot of noise and sounds. You know, and they throw rocks at you and they do things like that as a bluff to get you to move. You know, that's maybe we're stepping up on their version of violence to a certain extent. But, you know, none of that was going on. This was just these barking noises, a lot of them, and I couldn't get close to them. Not close enough to inspect, which is what I kept trying to do. Every time I'd take it, you know, move, that little crowd of whatever it was would move as well. Anyway, went back.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because that's not a tactic or strategy of any known North American animal. It just doesn't happen, right? I mean, you would probably agree with that.
Certainly none in West Texas. I can't say familiarity with all North American mammals.
Okay.
That's nothing I know of in West Texas that's going to behave like that. Either way, what kind of animal? I mean, one animal's going to have hands that's going to go up there and rail on a corner post.
Exactly. Right.
Something to, you know, we don't have any bears that are this far out. I mean, there's bears in Texas, but not here. Not in this region. And so but I wasn't going that way. I wasn't thinking, well, this is a mysterious moment in my life. You know, this is a mystery animal here. I wasn't thinking that at all. I just started going, it's time to leave. I mean, just time to leave. So backed up all the way back, making sure I, you know, had my weapon oriented in that vicinity, and kept backing up, made it to Russell, and we talked about it, and time to move out. Maybe foreboding was a better word.
Okay. All right. Sure.
Or feeling threatened. I mean, I generally remember feeling apprehension and I don't want to use the word fear because I don't think we were there yet, but and I'm not saying I haven't been there, but just time to move out. So we gathered up, and we didn't have anything. We camped open air and just, you know, a couple of ground cloths, and, you know, kicked out the fire. And right before we went up into the up onto the top of the riverbank, which was probably a good 9-10 feet above us, I took my HK and I just did a reconnaissance by fire into the mesquite.
Okay, I think I've heard Will. I may have heard Will talk mention that tactic in the past. I've heard it somewhere before.
Will was a cavalry trooper. He knows what a recon by fire.
I was just going to say a little recon by fire.
Yep. You can solve a lot of problems with the reconnaissance by fire.
That's right. If you're not sure, just take a pot shot in it.
Yeah. So I just opened up with the HK91 and everything we had just to clear a route for us through the mesquite, because I didn't know I couldn't see. You just couldn't. It's so thick in those areas you cannot see what's in it. You don't know that Jack the Ripper's standing there or anything. You just don't know. And so we got out, got in the truck, and drove to the farmhouse about 20 miles, and that's it. That's the first one.
What, did you get any response from firing into the brush?
None that I recall.
Did it shut them up?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. I wish I could. I at a certain point, it started. we focused on the situation, which was to get out of here, and I wasn't listening to anything. I just.
As you backed up, did they then start following you?
They did not follow me past the second dogleg. They did. They stopped where they had started when I first heard it. I had it on. I could show you on a map. But they when I first heard them and said, "I wonder what that noise is," and walked down the river to begin with. That's about as far as they got to us. So they were, good 150 meters away or so. They never, whatever they is, it never closed on us. But again, when we started evacuating, it was evacuate. I wasn't paying attention to anything other than that, than the topic at hand. And so.
I've never heard, maybe some of you gentlemen have. Have you ever heard a coyote bark? I've heard them yip, howl. Do they bark?
I've heard coyotes make every noise imaginable, and there'll probably be some on my property here in a couple of hours. But this was definitely, like I said, there was no canid noise at all going on here. Because I've exhausted myself trying to think it was just coyotes, or that was just because I think we need to do that with this topic. Is the first thing we need to do is prove that it's false. Prove it.
Yeah, start eliminating things. You don't have wolves. Do you have red wolves down there?
We do have red wolves. They're very they're in amongst coyotes quite a bit. They're not a full breed anymore. You've got the Mexican wolf and you've got the red wolf. A Mexican wolf's going to be further to my south, down south of San Antonio in that vicinity generally, out to the Gulf and down into the valley, and then in northern Mexico. And out, all over Texas, you're going to have the red wolf. But the problem is they're basically red coyotes.
The red wolf, and that was my understanding, is the red wolf is actually, it's really small. It's almost like just sort of like a larger coyote, except it actually is part of the wolf family.
It's a bigger, redder coyote, at least the ones I've seen. And I think the Texas Parks and Wildlife is trying to breed, get the coyote blood out and recreate the breed over generations. I think that is a project that's ongoing, but I can't speak to it. I've just heard that. I don't know that that's correct or not. But the only time I saw one was in a zoo. In Victoria, Texas, which used to have a fantastic zoo called All Native Animals of Texas, and that's the only time I've ever seen one on the hoof. And
okay,
you'd have had to pay me to tell me it wasn't coyote. I mean, I just red-tinted coyote to me. So no, Judge, I don't think it was I don't know. I'm sure someone could Google that up and listen to what a red wolf sounds like, but again, this had no canid sound to it.
Gotcha.
But I'm also hesitant I'm hesitant to use the word bark because it wasn't that noise. It wasn't the barking. I just don't know what else to call it. It was just loud, and there was several.
I've heard these creatures make, for the lack of a better word, it was a scream bark. I talked about this with one of our past guests. I just talked to him on the phone the other day, a guy named Dalton. He lives here in Oregon, and he said he said it's one of the most common noises besides the whistle. It was this like a 2-second, I don't think it's what you heard, but they make a kind of a that's
pretty good.
There you go. All right. I'm hired. But that's a common noise sound that they make.
That's not bad. That's pretty close. I mean, that's as close as anything I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I just call it a scream bark or a chuff or something. I've heard it at like 2 a.m. and out camping.
Picture a cacophony of those going on.
Yeah, that would get your undivided attention.
Maybe 30 yards from you, but you cannot see because of the foliage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's disconcerting. It really is. It's odd. It's not what you would normally hear. That get me backtracking in a hurry.
Yeah, and there's, I think, Tom, I sent you one of the accounts that happened right in the same location. Another link to an encounter that also happened there.
Yeah, yeah.
That little specific area, it's certainly not a hotbed in y'all's world, but I think there's been about 3 or 4 reported incidents. Now, how many haven't been reported, who knows?
Yeah, no, Texas is, to me, it's an interesting area, especially when it deals with this creature, because there's a lot of them there, and they will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they, for lack of a better word, they're aggressive. They have attitudes.
Yeah, short tempers.
All the accounts I'm familiar with out here in West Texas, and there aren't thousands of them, there's not ideal habitat. There's limited water and limited cover and vegetation. But, they can have all the cattle they can eat, that's for sure. I just don't, every account I read from at least in the West Texas, I don't want to say every, but most of them are past curious. It's past the curious who just wants to see something. He's curious about you, you're curious about him. That kind of moment that there just seems to be some aggression behind the other one. And I in looking back on this, if that's what it was, I think you're right, Tom. I think it was. Well, I think you could be right that being drawn further away from my buddy, separated, just like beaters, sort of doing like reverse beaters on a lion hunt.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing, it's nothing new that we hear from time to time. We hear about this, where people are being baited or drawn in, and then they suddenly realize they get that aha moment, like what you had. This isn't right. I'm not getting what I'm after, and I'm being either separated from another person, I'm separated from my vehicle, I'm being drawn into an area where they could flank me.
Yeah, I remember thinking, this I don't see an end. I don't see a piece of terrain I can end this on up there, and I'm pretty sure it was a bright moon that night, because I remember seeing pretty well. I couldn't see, like, there was this, the shoulders of the river were going to open up very quickly, in another 100 yards. And that way I'd be able to get a good look at it. There didn't seem to be an end of it, at least one that I foresaw.
Have you gone back there, Colonel?
Yeah, we've even camped back there several times. I have not been back there in probably, last time I was there when my kids were little. It's probably been 20 years maybe since I've been there. But they no longer have access to that lease, so I can't. I mean, that was they gave up the lease back to the owner, so I can't physically go right to that spot. Though I can certainly point to it on a map for you. But
I was just wondering if there was any duplication of that type of experience there.
Me and my buddy have talked about it a good deal. I mean, we're still in constant contact, and he leans the same way I do now, that we've all kind of put it together. And this piece, do you remember when this happened? Yeah. I remember that when you went and did this, or remember that noise that was being made. That's West Texas, circa late 1970s, maybe early 80s.
So you had another experience following that?
I had another, yes, I had, and I'm always hesitant, this is such a rare creature, and when people have multiple, and I certainly don't consider myself one of those, it's just, what are you doing right that you can keep seeing this thing pop up, all these times? And I guess it's just geography and baiting and everything else we do is so different now than what the four horsemen would even thought about back then. Yeah, I was in the Army, Fort Stewart, Georgia. This was fall of '87, September or October. Likely is not September or later in September. And we were in the middle of there's a place, I don't know if Will ever experienced it during his time, but there's a real hellhole in the Army called the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California. And it's where you deploy out there, your unit deploys, and you go fight bad guys for 2 weeks. And it's merciless. I mean, it is merciless. And you got advisors all over you and observer controllers, and you're getting your teeth kicked in all the time. I mean, it's just brutal. And back then, I don't know how they do all of that now, but in the 80s, you went through what was called a train up. You would spend months in the field prior to that deployment, just getting ready. You would spend months training just to get ready for that training. I mean, it's Reagan's president. There's lots of money, so we could, you went and I'm grateful for it because it certainly taught me how to fight. I certainly learned my craft out there and didn't have to wait for Iraq to teach it to me. I knew what I knew, and I knew what my business was, and it taught me. But it's just I learned all the hard way, so it was always anyway. So we're getting ready to go to National Training Center right after the first of the year, and this is September. Late September, maybe early October, and we have been on the train up for, I guess, since right after Labor Day. So we've been out there 3-4 weeks max, training. And I was a platoon leader at the time, and Fort Stewart crosses Liberty, Tatnall, and I can't remember the other county. Can't remember it. But Fort Stewart's a really big fort. And it's the biggest, it used to be the biggest fort east of Mississippi. I have no idea if it is today. And it's just north of Savannah, a ways. It's basically a swamp. Soldiers called it Camp Swampy after the Beetle Bailey cartoon. And so everything's elevated. The roads are all, 6 feet in the air, gravel tank trails. You know what I'm talking about, Will, with tank trails and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
These are all elevated. I don't know how they are at Fort Lewis. I've been to Fort Lewis, but I was never downrange there. These are elevated because they flood. It's a constant, it's the Savannah Rain Festival year round. Comparable to the weather y'all probably got up there with it's a constant rain, and it's just swamp, and you're right on the from the Atlantic, and within grenade distance of the Atlantic. Anyway, so you've got to cross at times when you're training at Fort Stewart. You have to cross hardball roads that the public uses because training areas will be segregated or separated by civilian highways and roads and things like that. And at Fort Stewart, that's just the way it is. There's just roads bisecting the training area. So you have to, we were in a brigade, which is just a tremendous amount of combat power. That is a lot of people. It's about 3,500 soldiers. And we were crossing one of these Georgia highway, whatever, 120, I don't remember what it was. But you had to have MPs shut down the oncoming traffic. So at your crossing points, there were MP stands. And they would come out there. It was concrete reinforced asphalt. They had stations to where they parked their vehicles, and stations where they put the flashing lights, and 2 MP cars would go out each direction to halt the traffic. And you had to cross under that. You couldn't just sneak across. Well, you're tempting fate if you did. Anyway, we're crossing one night, and it's taken hours to cross. Going to the next objective or whatever we're doing. We're not tactical necessarily. I don't remember us being tactical, but I think it's more of an administrative move. But my platoon pulls up to the crossing point. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm on time and everything else, but the brigade is taking too long, so the MPs are shutting down the crossing point right in front of me. I said, guys, I can get across this road in a minute. all 4 vehicles. Done. Sorry. Yeah. Time's now. So it's Crossing Point shut down. So I get on the phone to my commander and tell him what the situation is. I'm trapped on the other side of this hardball away from y'all. And he said, well, go ahead and full security and blah, 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 and radio watch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I Roger outed, and then I went on and did just the opposite. I didn't do that. I formed us into a herringbone, which is like a circle of the vehicles. Everybody's tactical, so in case just somebody's happened to sneak up and drive on it. And we were smoked. We've been downrange for weeks now, and we were smoked. Physically, mentally, there was no rest. I mean, you weren't getting any sleep. It was just one thing after another. And so I made the decision, since I was separated from the entire brigade and knew no one would be coming back this distance, and the road crossing was closed, I made a decision to, in the Army, what we call going admin, which is where my strat platoon of killers, as soon as I told them that, they turned into Donald Pleasant's platoon and Kelly's Heroes right away. I mean, it became turret lizards. So I don't think admin was out of my mouth before they were all. I mean, there's underwear flying from the antennas. It just goes crazy right away. And
sounds like a normal cav unit.
Yeah. I've seen units that look like that when they are, when they're not on that. Plenty of times. But anyway, and guys are sleeping. It's hot. It's humid. Guys are sleeping on top of their vehicles. I mean, the ramps are down. Hatches are open. Got a radio watch going. K-pots and LBE are thrown into the vehicles, and you're not walking around with anything. You're just your BDUs and just enjoying the moment. The Army does teach you to enjoy moments, and you're just there's no one here. No one's going to bother me. I'm not going to get told to go attack something at 2:00 in the morning because I can't get across the road for admin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm going to take this time to crash a little bit. So we're all in this herringbone, and we're kind of in a little clearing. I want to use the word like a hammock in Florida, where it's just a little bit of elevated ground. I think that's the right term, right? I'm not sure. But we were just in a little bit. We weren't in the swamp. We were in a area elevated off of it, and it was fairly clear. There were pine trees, but it was an old growth pine forest, so you could see. And the just outside the perimeter was a what looked to me to be an old LZ, because it was pretty round and kind of open for a bird to come in. And we're sitting there, and gosh, it's not super late. And I'm sitting underneath a tree with my platoon sergeant, and our backs are to the platoon, and we're just kind of staring out into the nothing, and we're just talking, just having a conversation. Typical soldier stuff. Probably lots of F-bombs and everything else being used. And from this open area is probably 100 meters by 100 meters, circular. Not perfectly, it was overgrown in quite a bit, but meaning there wasn't a lot of pine trees and stuff in the way. This was kind of a little bit of a clearing. I guess in other parts of the world you'd say a meadow maybe. But we're just talking, nothing. I mean, admin, I can hear the radio, we hear the radio squelching. All that's taken care of. We really got nothing to do. So we're just kind of enjoying that. But it's very quiet overall. All you can really hear is the radio squawking, because the soldiers went to sleep right away, which is what they do best. In case you didn't know, they'll go to sleep anytime, anywhere, any place. But right in front of us, I don't know, 50, 75 meters, what I heard was a woman being murdered. That's the sound I heard. Enough that it brought both of us immediately to our feet. And nothing. There's nothing in front of us except forest. And I start walking towards the screen because I'm thinking there's a woman being, there's some woman, being attacked over here. My platoon sergeant says, in platoon sergeant language, asks me to come back. He didn't say it like that, but you have to just know how platoon sergeants like to talk. But so I came back. I don't know what I was going to do, beat him to death with my empty empty M911 or not. But what's interesting, at the same time that's going on, is as I'm walking towards it, platoon sergeant tells me to come back, so I turn around and I come back. That my entire platoon look like prairie dogs. They're all wide awake. And they're all sticking their heads out of turrets, out of everything. So you got all these heads that have popped up from this noise. And everybody's just wide awake, all at once. And soldiers always know what to do because they immediately started up their vehicles and closed the ramps, closed all the hatches, and went back to sleep because nothing was going to get through an armored vehicle. So it was just always interesting to me that they did that immediately. It was like they'd been trained in a battle drill. How quickly they responded to that screen. They didn't want anything to do with it, and they just locked themselves up in their vehicles. So it was pretty interesting. But over the years, I went back and forth on it, back and forth. What was that thing? And for a while, I convinced myself it was Florida panther, but I think the first sighting of a Florida panther in Germany was in the 2000s. That's the only panther in the region. And it's an extremely rare animal. I think your chances of seeing a skunk ape are far higher than your chances of seeing, a Florida panther. It's just very rare. And a Florida panther is not the same size as our cougars out here. It's a much smaller cat. At least it appears to be in the picture. And this was loud. We call it the Puyallup. I'm sorry if I'm massacring that. Call it the Puyallup scream. And really, that's either one or two animals screaming at each other. And it's several series of screams. Just breaking it down and listening to it, there's scream, pause, scream, pause, scream, pause. That's the way I hear it anyway. I've never been in a sound studio, seen it broken down. But am I right, Will? Is that the way it?
Yeah, right. And I lived just a few miles from there when that was going on.
Oh, well, that is pretty darn close. Just it's not the whole noise they make, but it's just that if you just take that one scream and placed it about 7,500 meters away from you and hearing that and seeing nothing.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I just want to comment on the sound that a mountain lion makes. Basically, and the reason for this in my mind is because the mountain lion is just a huge overgrown house cat. Okay. Yeah. Mean house cat. But when and you and I talked about this when we spoke earlier, they go, ow. It starts high and goes down. Ow. Almost like I've heard her scream. It's like a scream meow. And you can tell if you've heard it once, you know exactly what it is.
It's not a pleasant noise. I mean, it's a shocking noise, but it's not what I heard.
And that's what I wanted to point out.
Yeah, I think what we've got is you read a lot of 19th century accounts about panther screaming. I think they're bumping into these things. It's what I think they're doing, because the mountain lion noise that we're familiar with, or cougar, catamount, Florida panther, whatever, is my understanding is that it's a breeding noise and it's done by females. And the female cat, the mountain lion, can come into breeding at any time she wants to. The general breeding of the Florida panther, anyway, is November through, I think, March, something like that. Not to say that they can't breed in August if they choose to, but it's a breeding call. It's not anything other than that. Meaning if a Florida panther was creeping around out there, saw us, she wouldn't make that noise in surprise.
She didn't think you guys were attractive enough, or
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a couple of guys who were probably, anyway, so it was, I mean, it was a woman screaming. And it was, it wasn't a 5-minute long one or anything like that. It was very loud. It was right in front of us. And it was over. I mean, it was over as soon as, you stand up. What the? I mean, it just like you're walking down a street in some city, you heard that, you would know that that's a woman under duress. And that's what I thought, except I was out in the middle of the swamp. And I really never, after that, the next day, and then just got caught up in being soldier stuff and everything. And then I was back in Texas, and I was driving between Houston and San Antonio, and just outside of San Antonio on I-10, there's a creek that crosses the interstate, or the interstate crosses. The creek is called Woman Hollering Creek.
Wait, where is this? This is in Texas?
Yeah, it's no. I was in Georgia. This happened to me, but when I was back,
yeah, but the
Texas,
Woman Hollering Creek, is that in Georgia or Texas?
That is in Texas. That is years later. I noticed that driving between Houston and San Antonio one time. I noticed that, and I thought, well, I wonder what that is. Because I heard a woman hollering out in the middle of no place one night. And it's, anyway, it's just outside of San Antonio. You can't miss it. I'm sure it's on, anybody can Google that up. I was, I've been to Fort Lewis a few times, but, there's a tremendous amount of accounts out there.
And it's a huge area, the training areas.
Oh, you just, the military accounts I have a place in my heart for.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And but there seems to be something around reservations.
Definitely, I've got a friend that's a retired first sergeant. He was at Fort Polk. I can't remember what year he said, but he was heading with his Humvee to one of the training areas. That they were doing they were doing some kind of an FTX out there, and he thought he had to stop and take a leak. He said, so I stopped in the middle of the tank trail. And 50 feet away, one of these things screamed at him.
Well, you're right there. I mean, gosh, there's so many coming off of, Missouri and Arkansas are very hot.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a tremendous amount of, the Deep South gets a lot of attention, but the Mid and Upper South, has certainly got their accounts. Certainly does. Let
me ask you something. As a higher ranking officer, when you were stationed in places like that, did you ever hear stories?
No, I would, I didn't start asking. I was very aggressive with my career. And you were either, back in the day, you were either deployed, you were going to deploy, or you were coming back from the deployment.
Yeah, I hear you there.
And then 9/11 happened. And, that changed every dynamic I'd seen. I'd been in the Army for, 12, 13 years at that point. And it completely changed overnight everything. So it's all different now. It's I by that point I was just up doing step and fetch for general officers. So I wasn't down at the lieutenant level learning anymore. I was just producing. But it's everybody's up tempo went crazy. I mean, everything switched. Deployments, it just didn't have time to think. And I would have preferred to go. I went back to Iraq instead. I wanted to go to Afghanistan, but I couldn't swing that. And I ended up going back to Iraq. But I wanted to go to Afghanistan just because you're kind of getting into different country over there.
Yeah.
You're getting close to some tall, hairy folks.
Yes, you are.
And I'm my curiosity wanted me to go there, but I was just so focused on my career every day that and then what didn't take was my family. So 4 kids and
right,
married, and just so you come home and you're in that you're in that engagement area for the next 12 hours. Then you go to work and you're in that engagement area for 12 hours.
And that's the way it is when you're in harness. You're focused on what you're doing.
That's correct. You got your iron sights are at about 50 meters.
Exactly.
And you're going to hit anything that comes into your engagement area. But other than that, if it comes into your buddy's engagement area, well, sucks for you. Anyway, I think that there's something more that needs to be done on soldiers, on airmen. I mean, all of these, there's so many accounts that are out there, and they're kind of disjointed and all over the place. That always just appeals to me more than anything else. I understand the guy in the trailer park that sees one, because I'm from that world. But you know, the 19-year-old in a deuce and a half, which we don't have anymore, by the way. You know, that's vehicles broke down on a tank trail someplace, and then one of these things walks up.
Right. So what do they do? You know?
He's got blanks. If he's got that at all, you know, he probably doesn't have blanks. He's just got his weapon. I have two more things that, again, I'm not saying they're related. I'm not saying they're not. But these are two more things, and I don't know where to categorize them. You know, I don't know which in the pigeonholes that are in my mind, I don't know to replace these 3x5 cards. So I'm just going to tell you. Easter weekend, Bexar County, which is around San Antonio. We were on the far outskirts of Bexar County, out where it was definitely rural. It's not anymore, but it was then. It's Easter weekend because I know we'd had an Easter egg hunt, and I'm probably 7 or 8. And me and my cousin are doing what at least young Texas boys do. We go into the wood line, you know. It's so you go see what's in the woods. You just go hang out in the woods, and that's what you did. And we're going through the woods and find a dead fawn. And it is at most a week old, at most, if it's that. It is a tiny little thing. And it is torn completely in half. And by that I mean the rear skeleton is still attached to the foreskeleton. The front part of the deer, from the rib cage up, it looked like a baby deer on the ground. So that was very alive and there were no flies on it. There was nothing on it yet. So I knew it was fresh, even back then. And it wasn't stiff, because I picked it up. I was a little boy. But half of it was skeletal, no gut pile, not anything left on the back half of the skeleton. I mean, tissue and sinew and all that stuff. Just, you know, the glossy bone matter. But the forward half of the thing was complete. And it was probably about 75 meters off back of a person's house where we found it. It wasn't, I maybe you guys know what that is. I still to this day don't.
Alan, was it, so it was dismembered in half?
The front portion of the deer was complete. Looked like a live little deer. The back portion, the skeletal remains were still attached, but there was no muscle, no skin, no tissue, nothing to include no gut pile. It was as if something came up and ripped the skin off the back half of the fawn and ate it from halfway down. Am I painting a good enough picture there? I don't know if I am or not.
You're doing an excellent job. And
what is that?
It's very strange. It's the only thing I can think of, and Will, you know about this, the gal that you interviewed, the elk in Oregon, where basically her dad shot the elk. They ended up there like, I think 20 or 30 minutes max after the kill. And the elk was completely skinned. I don't want to say field dressed, but there's just nothing left.
The hide was removed. The hindquarters were gone. Some of the hooves were laying there.
Yes. The head was gone, yes. And he's holding, I don't know if it was her husband or her dad was holding one of the hooves. And you could see no tools.
It was broken.
It had just been, it's broken. And there was one area in that, it's that kind of dusty volcanic dirt. There was like a footprint, large footprint in there with mud on it, or blood on it, rather. You could just barely kind of make it out. That's the closest I can think of. And also my understanding is and I'm no expert, and I'm not even close to it, these creatures tend to, and I think it's similar to chimps as well, will go after internal organs because that's where the nutrients are. But I can't explain, why you'd have half a deer that's still there and the other half where you said you just skeleton, right?
Skeletal, there was probably little tissue on it, but not much. I mean, it looked like it looked like you'd taken a pair of scissors,
Yeah.
cut it through the abdomen, and field dressed the entire hindquarters of the animal, but you left the bones on, and there was no gut pile. There was not the normal, macabre results of, that process. There was nothing, and the thing was still, because I dragged it back to my cousin's house, because that's what I guess little boys do. And of course, my cousin, who was a microbiologist, freaked out and scalded my hands, getting me scrubbed out and everything else like that. But because I thought, hey, this is cool. It's half a deer.
Yeah, right.
Sounds to me like you may have interrupted something. That's why it took the back portion, but you interrupted it before it could take the front and
but it could have
digest
taken all
it.
of it.
Well,
It's a fawn.
here's my thought. Why it was still left there, and especially being a fawn, and the bones were there. If it was an adult, if it was a Sasquatch, if it was an adult, it would have eaten the bones, and it would have carried off the remainder. It was probably a juvenile.
Well, I didn't think about that.
Just a thought, though.
How do they train their young to hunt?
Exactly. I mean, they must teach them how to do all that.
I'll bring you back a fawn so you can,
Sure. Yeah, exactly. It starts eating, and either they left for some reason and left the carcass. I mean, who knows? But if it was one of these creatures, that's my guess. It was probably a juvenile.
Yeah, just like a lion cub bringing in, here.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of moment. But, what bothered me was the no gut pile. What bothers me in hindsight, no gut pile. It wasn't stinking. There was not a fly on it. Nothing. No after effects. Nothing. And it was still very flexible. But no swelling, no puckering, no nothing. I mean, it looked like the fawn was walking along, fell over dead, and then that happened, whatever that was. But it is bothered. I don't know if it's related to any of this or not. I just wanted to put it out there, Will. So.
Yeah, it's very strange.
I didn't mean to cut you off a while ago, by the way. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't. The question I have is, you took it to your relative who's a biologist, field biologist?
Microbiologist.
Microbiologist. Did he have an opinion?
No, she didn't. She, other than I was gross and do not ever touch dead bodies. Don't bring them back to the house. But because I drug it up, I'm like the dog bringing in the kill. Hey, look at this! Look what the mighty hunter has returned. Because I was fascinated because the front half looked alive.
Right.
It looked completely normally alive, like you found it. Like when a mother leaves it. A doe leaves her fawns. It was, but I don't know what it was. But it's always bothered me. Of course, Bernie, Texas, and that area of the hill country certainly has its share of sightings as well. What all this has taught me is whenever I'm rural, and I'm that way a lot with ranchers or stuff like that going out, I always ask, or if I'm ever around a police officer or especially a game warden, and I'm just talking to them, I always ask, I don't lead with the big man. I just say, what's the most interesting thing you've ever come across? And I was at a rancher's a couple of years ago. It's old ranch, old Texas ranch, and last generation on it, old lady in her 80s, and we're having a nice lunch there with several people. And I do my thing. I get her cornered, and we're talking about stuff. And I say, "What's the most unusual thing you've ever seen here?" And without missing a beat, she said, "A baby gorilla."
Well, now that's interesting.
That's all I got. Couldn't get anything else, just a baby gorilla next to a tank. Tank out here is what, the tank is a pond in the rest of the world. In Texas, it's a tank. So.
Well, listen, fellas, we're out of time. Anybody have any questions or for Alan, or Alan, if you have anything for us?
No, not at all. Thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure on my part.
Alan, I'm going to send you a picture. I got something to show you after that last piece you mentioned. You'll appreciate it.
Okay. I'm all for pictures. You bet.
All right, fellas. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Alan. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Very interesting. Thank you. Absolutely.
Yes, Alan, we certainly appreciate your time, and thanks again.
Humbled to be asked.
Welcome back from the break, everyone. We have Norma and Bob with us today. You have some updates for us, I hear.
Yeah, quite a little bit. We've noticed a lot of activity in the last 2 months in the area that we research. And we've been going there basically weekly, sometimes, twice a week. And we, Will, I wrote you and told you about one of the things that was happening, that I was like, I don't understand, and I've been doing this for 15 years. And of course, you're learning all the time. But in this particular area that we've been researching in for at least 13 of those 15 years, this has been the most activity in this one location that we've ever seen. And when we go there, and when we've been going there, every single time there's activity, there's something that's moving around directly around us, in the area that we are in. And, at first you always write it off as, woodland creatures, deer, something like that. But as we keep going on through the night, it proves to us that it's not. Like, there'll be a branch break, or there'll be a knock, or, something like that. The last time that we talked to you, the last time that we were on your show, we had talked about those howls that we heard, and those very loud wood knocks that we heard. That's included in part of this, 8 weeks or so that we've been going there. So when I had messaged you about, that sort of activity, and it doesn't really do a whole lot. It's just walking around us, meandering. It's not really doing a whole lot, and it's not leaving either. It's staying there, and we will, put our spotlights out. We'll be looking around, and it doesn't phase it, I guess. We were in the car the other night, and actually it was probably a couple of times that we were there. And we put the air conditioner on, we put the car on and put the air on to cool off because it was, hot, and nothing is deterring this, creature from leaving. So this has been going on for quite some time. And I started to think about, a couple of days ago, why this is happening. And a couple nights ago, was pretty much the determining factor of what I was thinking of why this is happening. So I'll get into that, I guess, in a minute. But one of the nights a few weeks ago, because we hadn't been, we were kind of busy for like 2 weeks, and the weather was kind of, stormy and, not good for going out to do any research. So it was a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before we were able to get there again. And when we went, the same thing was happening. There's movement all around us. There's, twigs snapping. It sounds like something is walking and, snapping. That it's different from what you hear that a deer does. It's actually like when you put your foot down and you hear that cracking all the way, like your foot is going over those branches or those little twigs, and you can hear that whole movement of the foot cracking those twigs. So this is what we're hearing. And the last time before yesterday, or a couple nights ago, before that, when we went, there was the same movement. And I'm like, all right, well, Bob and I talk to each other while we're out there, like, I wonder, is it going to do anything? And I said, well, I guess time will tell, if it's a deer or if it's, something else, or if it's, a squatch or something. I guess time will tell. And sure enough, little times during this duration of being there, a bigger branch would snap, or I think at one point, and it gets close to us too. It doesn't come up and touch the vehicle or anything, but it gets pretty close. So at one point, toward probably 3/4 into the time that we were there, all of a sudden we hear a partial step. And then we hear step, 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 and then another partial step, like it just took a half step and stopped. And Bob and I were like, that was, first of all, it was close. Second of all, it was definitely,
It was clear.
It was so clear, and it was definitely bipedal. And this is like, 3 a.m, and this thing had been around us the whole entire time. We got there at like midnight, and this thing was just hangs around us. And then after that, prior to that, we had heard, like I said, these, stick breaks and other things that made us, kind of.
We got a moan that night.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got a moan that night too. And that was
different.
That was in between the walking. It was weird.
Low moan.
Yeah, it was it was very close. It was a very low moan. Very, I don't know. It was just so, it wasn't prominent, but you could hear it, but we didn't hear it until after we listened to the H2 after. And we listened, or actually, I think I heard it, and I asked Bob. Yeah, I did. I heard it, and then I asked Bob if he heard it, and then he said he didn't, and he heard it when we both listened to the H2 again on the recording, and he's like, "Wow, I didn't even hear that." But I mean, I heard it, and he didn't hear it, but then we both heard it again when we listened to it on the H2. So it was the walking first. And then there was that low moan, and it was close. It wasn't far away. It was very close. And then after that, toward the end of the night before we left, there was a huge tree break, a branch break. And so that kind of cinched it at the, at the end of the night when that happened. And then, of course, we left before daybreak. So that was one of the incidences that happened most recently. But again, prior to that, this same thing was happening over and over and over every time that we went there. And when I had mentioned that to you, I said, Will, what else, could this be that would, act like this and do this every single time that we went there? And you had mentioned it being a sentry, a watcher. And that makes sense. To me, that makes sense. To Bob, that makes sense. We're like, okay, so this thing is out there watching us. That's okay. It throws a couple, pebbles or something toward us, but it doesn't do a whole lot. It just stays there and watches us. And so this, like I said, this has been going on for a while. So the night before last night, we went there. It was just Bob and I, and we do what we normally do. And as soon as we get there, and this happens every single time, as soon as we get there, we can hear something out there. And once again, we're not going straight to Bigfoot. We are just waiting to see what's going to happen. So we get there about, I think it was about 11 o'clock that night. Set up everything, settle in. We're in the pitch black. It's so dark out there. And we're just listening to all the night sounds. We can hear something out there once again. Although the difference this night was it sounded like things were coming from different areas. Multiple areas where we were hearing things. And Bob was having an issue the first 10 minutes with his earbuds, so we had to we ended up changing those because he wasn't hearing what I was hearing. And for some reason, I don't know what was going on with the earbuds, but we ended up changing them. And then, then he could hear everything that was going on. So once again, we're listening. And at one point early on, so this is probably about 20 minutes after we get there. Actually, no, it was within that 10 minutes because I heard walking. I heard steps. And I said to Bob, did you hear that? And he's like, no, I didn't hear that. I said, okay, well, how can you not hear that? And then a plane went overhead and I said, did you hear the plane? And he's like, no, I didn't hear that. And that's when we realized something was wrong with the earbuds. So after we got that all settled and we were listening to things, then he was hearing everything that I was hearing that was going on out there. So multiple or different areas that we were hearing things from. And a couple times I said, Bob, I think this is on my side, but yet at the same time there would be something happening, in another area. So I said, I don't know. I think there's more than one out there. So we're listening, and about a half an hour in, we turned the lights on because it sounded like it was getting close. So we turned the lights on and the headlights of the vehicle on. And then I took the spotlight and started looking out on my side of the vehicle. And I started to scan left to right and into the woods. And as I'm doing that, I go all the way to the right as far as I can go. And I see by a tree, I see this, what appears to be eye shine, but it's smaller, all right, like the size of a child's eye. So, and it's just right by a tree, right by the edge of the tree, only one. And so I'm looking there, and I didn't really say anything to Bob at that point. I'm just like staring at it. So the beam of my light is right on this potential eye shine. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, what is this eye shine? What is it? So I stay there and I watch it for a little bit. It doesn't move. It doesn't do anything. So I'm like, maybe it's just because we had a storm earlier that day. And I thought, well, maybe it's water on, foliage just reflecting from the light. So I thought, all right, maybe that's it. There's water over there on a leaf or on a branch or something like that. And it's just reflecting. Because again, this didn't move. So I was there, I'm probably watching it for about a minute. And then I just scanned back and then I shut the light off and we just sat in the dark and we were listening to all of these things that were going on. Big snaps of branches, walking movement, and it was getting, it would get closer to us and then it would go away. And then we'd hear something from another, again, a different area. And I think I said several times to Bob, I think there's something on my side. I think it's on my side. But again, we're hearing it from another area. So a few times we turn that light back on. A half an hour later, something gets close. We turn the headlights on. I get my spotlight out again, and I'm scanning again. I scan left to right and go back to where I saw that reflection, and it's not there. It's gone. And I said to Bob, that eye shine that I saw, or that reflection that I saw, is not there now. And he said, really? I said, yeah, there's nothing there. I said, what was it? And where is it? So it's gone. And I said, huh. So I'm looking around, and I'm looking, further and deeper into the woods. And I thought I saw another reflection, but it was more, I don't know, it was in between a lot of trees, so it was hard to tell. And I know out there, there's nothing out there that can reflect anything with the spotlight. We know the area well, and we're there all the time, and we see, there's nothing that would reflect away from that or in the woods like that. So I see some kind of reflection in between the trees, and it's far enough away. It was probably about, I don't know, maybe from where the other reflection was by the tree, it was probably about 70 or 80 feet away from that, deeper into the woods.
The first one was what, like 30 or 40?
The first one that I saw was about, from us, it was about probably 60 feet away, somewhere around there, 50, 60 feet away. And then from that reflection, if I put my spotlight to the, left and further into the woods, that's where I was seeing another faint reflection that was a lot higher up. So I was kind of, I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what that is either. So I just, again, we shut off the spotlight, and I said, I don't know where that thing went or what it was, that I saw that first reflection. And this first reflection, this first eye shine that I saw, wasn't very high off the ground. It was probably about 4 feet off the ground. And so that's why I thought, well, maybe it's a deer, But again, it was gone. And of course, the deer can be gone. So then it wasn't there anymore. Then I saw that other reflection. Then another half an hour goes by or so. And we put the light on again, because again, these things are getting close to us, and we're hearing snaps and all kinds of things that are happening, activity, walking, moving all around us. It wasn't drastic, but it was, you could hear it, and it was pretty prominent. So here it is about 1:30 in the morning. And again, we put our lights on. And again, I take the spotlight out, and I'm like, why can't we see these things? These things are truly hide and seek champions. They are amazing that they can hide that well. So I take the spotlight out again. I scan it from left and right again. And I go back to that spot where I first saw that reflection, that eye shine. And it's there again, in the same exact spot that it was the first time I saw it. This is an hour later. And so the first time I saw it, half an hour later, it was gone. Half an hour later, there it is again. And so I have this, I'm like, what? I said, Bob, that eye shine is there again. And he said, what? I'm like, it's there. He goes, it's in the same spot. I said, I'm looking straight at it. It is just staring at me. And I'm looking at this thing. It's just staring. It's just looking straight at me. I'm straight on this eye. And I said, what is that? And it's in the same spot. And so I'm watching it. And while I'm watching it, things, action is starting to ramp up. The noises around us are starting.
You got the light.
Yeah, it's starting to ramp up. So we have this light, this beam on this eye shine, just directly on it, not moving from it. And I said, what is this? So it's just, and Bob's like, well, what is it doing? I said, it's just staring right at me. It's just staring at the light. Not yet. So I'm watching it, and then all of a sudden, and we're trying, like I said, there's movement around us, and we're trying to we're very focused on this eye shine. And all of a sudden, it moves. It moves slightly, and it goes behind the tree and comes back out again. And then I said, Bob, it moved. I said,
you said it was amber too.
Yeah, it was like, it wasn't a dark amber like the adults that I have seen. It was a lighter, like, I don't know how to explain it. It was a lighter amber color. And so I said, Bob's like, well, what color is it? And I said, I see the amber, but it's not like the dark amber, that I saw before. So I'm watching it, and it's going behind the tree and then coming back out. And it's not staying there very long. It's just kind of peeking. It's going in, it's peeking out. And then it stayed out for a little bit again. And then it went behind the tree just partially. So I could see part of the eye still there, but not the whole eye. And then it would come out again, full eye. Then it would go back again, partial. And it was doing this for a while. And I would tell Bob, oh, it's gone. Oh, wait, it's back. And he was trying to look over. And I think he saw it once. Didn't you see it once?
I couldn't get the angle on it.
He was in a different angle. And I think he saw it once, but that was it. And then it was coming in and out. And I said, Bob, it's out again. Oh, wait, it's back in again. He goes, well, and then it's partially out. I said, wow, what is this? What is going on? And then,
hey, Norma, I want to jump in for both of you guys. I got a kind of a comment and a
Sure.
question. So number one, you're definitely getting, and I'm going to ask for Will's comment on this as well, but it sounds like you're getting an escalation and the creatures are studying you. I think here's what I'm thinking. They're bringing the juveniles in. Yep. You guys are offering an excellent opportunity for them to study you, probably more than you're studying them. And when you see the eyes and they disappear, do you see anything besides the eyes? Do you see like a silhouette or a shape or anything, or are you just seeing the amber reflection?
Yeah, I wasn't seeing anything other than that, because I think because the light was so directly on it. I mean, right. I couldn't see anything else. All I could see was just the eye shine. And I mean, it was just looking straight at me,
Right. And that's exactly what it's doing, is it's looking right at you. And, you said, well, gosh, it disappeared. And then it came back like, an hour later. It may have moved. It may have just poked its head behind the tree, but it's also very likely that the creatures are learning to close their eyes.
Well,
stay in the same location, closes its eyes, and I do believe they learn this tactic because I think they understand very well about eye shine. It may have, again, it may have moved, or it may have just simply closed its eyes, but it's very likely that it stayed in the same location. And I think these creatures oftentimes will remain perfectly still, and they don't have an appointment that they have to be somewhere at a certain time. Their sense of timing, for lack of a better word, is not ours.
You mind if I jump in here, Tom?
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
A couple things. Number one, you and I were texting about this just moments ago. They were probably, if I were to give an opinion, using your presence as a learning tool for the juveniles. On the eye shine thing, I'm not so sure about that. I've seen eye shine a number of times over the years, and they never seem to really care. Not like they weren't aware of it. The fact, I mean, they're watching, but as far as them hiding eye shine, I don't know that they do that. I don't know, haven't heard or seen any kind of indication that demonstrates that, but watching you, absolutely. Learning from it, absolutely. So that's my estimation at the point anyway.
Well, it was going in or back outside and behind the tree and out and behind the tree.
Testing the waters.
Yeah, but here's the thing. At one point, I could tell that it had turned its head a little bit because I could see part of another eye, a partial eye. And then it turned back and all I could see was the one eye. Or it did something where I could partially see the other eye. But, it was probably as close, I would have to say, it was probably like the distance of a child's, eye, about the same size and the distance of a child's eye. So, or eye, size anyway. So it came back out and it was just, there. Now we had this spotlight on it for, at this point, probably 4 minutes, and it came back, it stayed out there, and all of a sudden I saw it blink 3 times. I saw it blink. And then when that happened, again, we're on this thing solidly for about 4 minutes, coming up to 5 minutes. And there was a wood knock, probably not that far from where this eye shine was. There was a wood knock. And then about probably a minute after the wood knock, there was a tree break, like a branch, a bigger, loud branch break. And we weren't even really deterred by that. But as I told you before, when we saw the eye shine again and we focused on it, the movement around us started to ramp up. So we get that wood knock, and then we get that tree break not far from where, we all were in reference to each other. And we were just so focused on this eye shine and what was going on with it that we weren't really concerned about the tree break.
We weren't paying much attention.
We weren't paying a whole lot of attention to,
it's there on the
knock and the tree break. But until we got a bigger, closer tree break, and this thing was massive.
We think that it was just a little bit frustrated that we're focusing the light on the baby.
We think that this is a young juvenile that was behind the tree, and it had stayed there for a while. And again, when we were after that huge tree break, Bob was like, that are they planning something? Are they scheming something to, he goes, because there's more than one. Are they coming up with a plan, sort of thing? And then
I think they got a little frustrated.
I think that they were.
Light was on the baby.
And I don't know. I guess my take on it was, if this was a juvenile, and this thing was not very big.
Not even a juvenile.
My 4-year-old grandson, is like 40 inches, 40 something inches. And I would have to liken it to his height, where it was. And the whole entire time, that height and coming behind the tree and stuff like that, it was just at that same height. So when that huge tree break happened, and we were getting a little concerned because that activity had gotten ramped up before that huge tree break happened. Bob's like, yeah, I think we should probably go. It's probably not happy that we're focused on this
baby,
potential juvenile or baby, that's behind the tree. And so we left, and as we're leaving, I still have my light on it. And the car is moving, I see the eye shine, and then it slowly goes behind a tree. And this tree that it went behind and has been behind was not very big. So I'm almost certain that it wasn't an adult even on all fours or, crouched down, because I think I would have seen something on either side of this tree. This tree was not very big. So this little thing could easily hide itself behind this tree. And as we were going, like I said, I'm still watching as we're moving and getting a different angle. And that eye shine just slowly went behind the tree. And I watched it for a while, and it didn't come back out after that. And so as we were leaving, on the way home, we were talking about it, and we were pretty excited about it. But I said to Bob, I wonder if these were parents of this juvenile, which I, more than likely were. And they were getting upset because we had that spotlight on that juvenile for 5 minutes, and we weren't taking it off. It's been found out. We know where it is. And I said, deer do that, right? Well, a deer will take their fawn and plant it somewhere and go out foraging. And that baby will stay there until the mother comes back and gets it. It'll be still. It'll just, sit there or lay there, and it won't move until the mother comes back and gets it. So it felt like it was similar to that, They take their juvenile and they say, okay, here you go. Sit right there, Junior, and don't move. We'll be back, But at some point, this thing, was looking behind the tree. So I don't know. I feel like that was probably what was happening. They were getting a little nervous that we were focused on this, this child or juvenile for so long. And it started to make them nervous. And man, let me tell you, that last tree break was pretty much,
big.
Get out, get away from,
get out,
get that spotlight off my kid. And, we're not going to tolerate
we got
anymore.
the message.
We pretty much got the message. Yeah. Because again, that activity started to ramp up as soon as we put that spotlight on that eye shine and stayed there for the 5 minutes that we were trying to figure out what was going on.
Well, it was hard not to watch it.
It was so hard.
It doesn't happen often.
And I did such a rookie mistake.
Yeah.
I think I told you that we got night vision binoculars. They work so well. And
you can video,
you can video
picture.
And you can take still photos. Well, guess what? That night vision binocular was in my bag, and I never took it out. And after on the way home, I'm like, what the heck?
It's like one part of your brain shuts down.
Yeah.
You're not even thinking about the fact that you could have been taking pictures or video this whole incident.
I could have been video.
And what are we doing? We're just staring at it.
And I'm like, what was I thinking? I'm not used to having this, for one thing. I think we've only taken it out once, and this was the second time. And I was like, what? Why didn't I have that thing out? I could have videotaped everything that was going on. I could have taken still photos. I'm like, what? That's like so rookie mistake. And I shouldn't be making these rookie mistakes.
Oh, Norm, I can tell you it's not necessarily a rookie mistake. I've mentioned this. My buddy Jack and I were in an area adjacent to Bluff Creek a number of years back, and we had talked about this in depth earlier that day, and we both had camcorders in our hands. And a little year-old bear comes zipping out in front of the truck. We followed it for probably 100 yards. It zipped off into the brush. We stopped and looked at each other and said, we didn't get a damn picture of that.
Right? Yeah. I was like, what what was I thinking? And somebody else had mentioned that, and I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I'm not used to having this yet. This is a new piece of equipment, and it's cool, and yes, I can do these things with it, but man, I had ample time to get that thing out and get some video of that, peeking around the tree thing.
It's just so easy to forget it.
I know, man. I was so upset, and they said, well, you'll do it next time. And actually, I think it was Lisa, or my friend Fred that we talk about a lot. Well, you'll get it next time. I said, I don't think there's going to be a next time. This was like one in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And maybe it will happen again. Who knows? But I mean, seriously, how did I not take that out and do that? I was just so focused. We were just so focused on this.
Norma, you hit the nail on the head. It's and Will, you've probably heard this term before. It's target fixation. And so you get kind of a tunnel vision.
Yeah, for sure. But man, I could just slap myself for that. That could have been just epic, having that on video, and just would have been phenomenal. But oh well, hindsight, right? But at any rate, that's the feeling that we were getting, and we were talking about that, all the way home. We actually called it was 1:30, well, by the time we left, I think it was like 1:45 in the morning. And I called our friend Fred, and I said, oh man, you got to hear this, And so we were talking about it with him, and he was supposed to come out with us. Last night we had gone out again, and he and another friend of ours came out. They were in one car and we were in another. Well, the family wasn't there last night.
No, they didn't like the activity.
For sure.
They weren't happy.
But that century was there. And it was for sure there. We could hear it. We could hear steps. We could hear the movement around us.
Small pebbles.
Small little pebbles were being thrown at us,
metal.
And they were hitting the cars. But they had to have been pretty small because they were like pinging off the vehicles. And so, we're in separate cars. And I said to Bob, maybe they don't like that, Fred and Jim are with us. A strange car is behind us. Maybe, they're
they're familiar with us.
Yeah, they're very familiar with us. But maybe this, they're not too happy with us. But we're hearing this, and it wasn't constant. It was every once in a while, and then it would, kind of be really quiet and kind of move quietly, and then you'd hear a little bit of a bigger branch break, and then again, shuffling. We were hearing shuffling. We were even hearing, and I think the night before last, when the potential family was there, we were hearing tongue pops and definitely tongue pops that we've not heard before.
And some like clicks and
clicks, and we were hearing that last night too. We were hearing these clicks and these tongue pops from whatever it was that was out there. And this is a
what
first.
Was the duration of the clicks? Would they go click, 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 or was it a click? And were they coming from the same direction, same creature, or was it coming from possibly flanked?
I thought that there were there was more than one out there. I had mentioned that to Bob. I said, I think there's more than one. But the clicks seemed like at times they were in succession, and then you would hear click, click, or click, 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 or something like that. But we were hearing them, and I said, Bob, that sounds like clicks. And he goes, yeah.
They weren't overly rapid.
They weren't overly rapid, but they would be, 3 or 4 in succession, and then every once in a while we'd hear that pop, the tongue pop. It was new things that we were hearing last night, and some other weird noises that we don't even know what it was, but definitely we could pick out the tongue pops, and we heard that the night of where the family was at, and we could hear that too, and clicks. And then with this century, last night we could hear that too. And we heard some, branches being broken off of trees, but not, they weren't substantial, they definitely weren't like the ones that, when we were watching that juvenile, but something to let them know or let us know that they were there. And
it was pretty disciplined too. It stayed still for about we're there 4 hours plus.
It's amazing.
It really didn't do a lot.
Yeah.
It just kept an eye on us.
And it never does. It never does when we're out there. With this particular century that we keeps happening every time we go out there. Now this is 2 months, okay? 2+ months that we've been going out there, and this stuff has been happening. The first thing was the I think it was the knocks and the howls, but the century was there at the same time. So this century seemed to be there every time that we go there. It's like it's watching us. Okay, they're here. We're going to keep an eye on them, whatever. So we were talking about that as we were going home too. And the next day, yesterday we were talking about it, and we feel like that there might be a family group that has moved into this area somewhere close by.
The baby that night before, yeah. I mean, we got a view of the baby.
Right.
So it's got to be a family.
But because of this century and because of what's going on and now the family thing, we feel like, and maybe, Will, you can shed some light on this or have a different opinion, but, there's not a whole lot going on in this area as much as...
Well, you mean human activity.
Human activity that used to be, and it wasn't even that prominent, back before the pandemic. But, I mean, people would go and, hike or something like that.
Yeah,
but
nobody going.
No, there's nothing going on there. So, we have a feeling that they are holding up somewhere out close to where we, do this research. And I guess the reason we feel that way is because of this ramped up activity that, I mean, this is not normal.
No, it's changed.
It's changed, in that 8 weeks that we've been going there, with this, again, with the century and with this potential family that might have been there the other night.
Yeah, I'm seeing that in other areas currently also where they're moving in, where there's an absence of people activity. They seem to be filling in that gap.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agree.
We feel like there's, because of all this activity, and again, we've been doing this in this area for like 13 years, and there are many, many times that we have gone there and never had like a century around us, or,
it's been quiet.
It would be random activity, like that runner or those tree knocks, or
we came in on a hunt.
Yeah, or the charge that we had, this is like all random stuff that there have been plenty of times we've gone there and absolutely nothing, just crickets or, just dead silence.
Yeah,
but
the sentry's a clear indicator there's a group there.
Yeah, well, that's pretty,
it's gotta be.
That's pretty obvious because, this is not normal for this area being so active like this. And the century is pretty, I guess I would say docile.
Patient, disciplined.
Pretty, just hanging out and watching us or doing whatever, throwing a stone here and there. Yeah. Last night was the first time that I think we've ever heard it pop and click when it was there. That's the first time. And you can pretty much hear it. And I told Bob.
2 places?
Yeah, 2 places. I'm thinking there's another one. There was another one.
Could have been a sentry and somebody else, but 2 sentries.
But Bob, I was talking to Bob when I was listening to the recording from, the night before, that I brought it in for him to hear. I brought it over for him to hear a certain thing when the trees went down and the knock and everything before we left. And I said, and I think I hear clicks and pops. And he said, yeah, I was hearing that too. So this is something new. This is, they are they liked this area, and I really feel like that was a juvenile there. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what you think. Will listening to the whole, story, and Tom listening to the whole story, but it feels like it was, a juvenile just planted there and said, "Look, stay there. We're off foraging, or we're off doing whatever."
Or teaching, like they said.
Or teaching, yeah.
Observationist.
Let me ask you a question. It was near a small tree, correct?
It was near, yeah. The diameter of the tree was smaller. Yes.
Were there bigger trees nearby?
Yeah.
Yeah. There were bigger trees, but
it was out where that bluff charge was.
It was on the same side as the bluff charge. It was probably
almost in the
same distance from where we were to that tree. That's
where you saw
where
the
we saw the eye shine. Yeah, the bluff charge is where the tree directly across from, or a little diagonal across from where we were parked. That's where the eye shine was when we had that bluff charge. So from that bigger, tree over about 50, 60 feet is where the other tree where the juvenile would have been hiding behind. And it wasn't as big, but the bluff charge tree was kind of like split in the middle.
It was like a group.
Yeah, it was like a group of trees. So again, it was big enough to hide whatever was behind it, but bigger than,
there were definitely bigger trees around.
Yeah, there are bigger trees around, yes. But this one was not, not a very big tree. I don't even know how much, probably maybe 2 feet in diameter, 2.5 feet, 3 feet in diameter. It wasn't very big.
Okay, I was just curious. It does sound like a learning experience for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they weren't too happy with us either.
I have no doubt.
Experience for us. Never keep your floodlight
on the baby,
on a juvenile when the parents are around. That's what we learned. And always take out your night vision and get it on get it on a record. Yeah.
It does take a lot of presence of mind to be prepared, and even then, you may not react depending on the circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we
bring like strobe lights now. I bought an electric chainsaw with a 14-inch blade, so it doesn't smell up gas. It's very powerful, and some wedges just in case they try to put a couple trees on the road on us. I'm trying to be as ready as possible for everything,
But man, I could just kick myself for not taking out that night vision. That's gonna be with me for a long time.
It does, and you're right about it being a one-time opportunity. Oftentimes, when you're in the field and doing something like that, run across something, it could be a one-time event. So that's something that I advise to people. If you're going to be out doing this, try to be as prepared the best you can, of course, but have the presence of mind to think, okay, all of these different things could happen, and how am I going to be prepared for that?
Oh, it was there. It was.
But beyond that, it should be in your hand.
We were semi-prepared.
It was within arm's reach.
It took me years to actually get in the habit of having one of my cameras in my hand at all times, because I usually carry a couple of them. And
the last time we had the Century, roaming around, and we first had the binocular. It was in my lap, This time I'm like, I'll get it if I need it. Yeah, well, that didn't work so well.
Well, Tom, any questions, or folks, do you have any questions or comments?
I'm just kind of, we were kind of hesitant about, bringing our, not really hesitant, but we were wondering if, when we brought our friends last night,
we don't want to drive them out.
Yeah, we were a little concerned about that, although they weren't there, and we thought that maybe they'd be, ready for us last night and be a little perturbed at us.
Trees
for,
going down right off the
for
bat.
everything that was going on the night before, that they might retaliate. But they obviously didn't. They weren't even there, I don't believe.
Sure. They move around through their feeding areas.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if they come back again. Usually it's Bob and I alone, and because we're in separate cars, the whole social distancing, thing.
Not me.
Not him and I. No, not Bob and I. But yeah, And they're using.
I love my wife, but
they're using our H2s. We have H2s for each one of us, so everybody can be hearing. I'm the only one recording on mine. We don't need to record every single one.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody is listening to the same thing, and we have two ways. And we hear something, and okay, did you hear that ping? Or they would call us and say, was that a rock? Or something like that. But we were all hearing the same thing. And we would also ask them if we heard something, was that you? Did you make a movement? Because these H2s can pick up pretty easily little things that are going on. And
well, you were wondering your question about.
Oh yeah.
Bringing them there.
Yeah, bringing them there, or bringing someone else there. I mean, we never know when that group is going to be out there. The Century seems to be out there a lot, or has been out there a lot. This is the first time with the clan or the family there. So, do you think they'll come back?
Yeah, and I think it's okay if you bring another vehicle there. In fact, if the whole group is there, you probably want to have a few more folks with you, a little bit larger group.
Yeah. We're wondering when we're gonna, get rolled one of these nights.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to become the ham sandwich.
We're pretty close the night before.
We're not bringing mustard and mayo. Sorry.
I'm gonna record that snap and send it. You can hear that tree. That was a pretty, clear statement I think you were making. Get your light off my kid. We've had enough. You found him out. You know where he is. Stay where you are, leave or whatever. But that was pretty interesting. Do you feel like that's maybe what happened?
I think so. It sounds like it.
Yeah, it feels like it does too.
Yeah, Norma, I want to comment. It's always great to hear from you that when we get an update, because you guys, both of you, have the most incredible, encounters, and it's a again, you're right, it's an escalation in activity, and in an area that people might not think of, Massachusetts. So thank you very much. It's and I really. Especially the part with the juvenile, that's pretty exciting. Very, very interesting.
I didn't even know if I could sleep. Go to sleep that morning.
It was batting her eyes at Norma.
I was just so excited and
blinking.
I couldn't wait to tell you guys. Oh man, you got to hear this.
Very fascinating.
This doesn't happen, every day, and I don't know if this clan has moved in. To this area. We don't know what's going to happen from here on in. There could be more, encounters and maybe even closer encounters.
Could very well be.
Yeah, with them. So, I mean, we'll
keep you updated.
When our car gets rolled and we, tell State Farm that this happened.
Tell them it was Daryl.
We covered it. It's on the commercial. Yeah, we covered
Picture
it.
of a Bigfoot. We covered
it. All right, folks. Listen, we're about out of time. Norma, Bob, thank you. It's a pleasure as always. Very, very interesting update.
Yeah, it's our pleasure too. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, everyone. We'll stay tuned for the third segment. We'll be right back after the break.
preliminary description of the external morphology of what appeared to be the fresh corpse of a hitherto unknown form of living hominid. This paper describes, in somewhat general terms, the results of a preliminary inspection of the corpse of what appeared to be some form of large primate of hominid form. The notion that it is a composite manufactured from parts of human corpses and/or other animals must, of course, still be considered, since the body has not yet actually been examined. Should it be, the artist who put it together, inserting several million hairs in the skin before it rotted or was preserved, would have to have had some concept to work from, and there is no such extant. This for the following reason. This body is not that of any hominid or pongid, and what is much more significant, it does not conform to any reconstruction or artist's conception of any fossil man or ape or other anthropoid. Its general features and particular characters, as detailed above, display an extraordinary mixture of what have until now been assigned either to men or apes, but it also shows others that have never been assigned or attributed to any of either. However, two separate companies specializing in model making for waxwork museums, exhibits, and film companies in Hollywood, California have been traced, and individual model makers working for both have stated that they made copies with wax or latex and using hair from bears. Mr. Hansen, the caretaker, informed us in January of this year that such a model had been made in April of 1967 because the owner of the original was worried about its safety. An object such as this could possibly be constructed, starting with the skin of a large male pale-skinned chimpanzee, using a human skull, glove makers' wood racks for the hands, and so forth. The original could have been of this nature, and then a copy or copies made from it. Just in case this might not be the origin of the specimen, we should consider the alternative, namely, that it is a genuine corpse of a comparatively recently killed specimen, not fossilized in any way, of some form of para-hominid. This is the considered opinion of Heuvelmans, and is based on as thorough an examination as he was able to make, considering that the specimen is encased in ice that is more than half opaque and sunk about 2 feet below the glass cover of its container. And, if this is the correct interpretation, we would opine that it would more probably be on the hominid rather than the pongid stem of anthropoid evolution. Just where it should be placed on that stem cannot, of course, be said until it has been properly examined out of its ice envelopment. Further, and much more important, will be any analysis of its blood, plasma, and other body fluids, if they are still sufficiently preserved for typing. Even then, we may well be confounded because this specimen displays such a combination of characters attributed to the two presently thought quite widely separated families of anthropoid primates, and this constrains us to add a note of added caution. In view of the fact that pongids and hominids have now been shown to fall into several groups, together, vide the Caucasoid and Congoid hominids with the gorillas and chimpanzees on the one hand, and the Mias, Siamangs, and gibbons among the pongids with the Mongoloid hominids on the other, is it not possible that not only the hominids, but the pongids have a grid-like genetic origin? If this be the case, could the concept not be further extended to include all the anthropoids, so that there may have been, and in this case may still be, truly man-like apes and ape-like men? This specimen is by several criteria a hominid, noticeably by its feet, but it has many pongid characters. Are the diagnostic features we are currently employing to separate the apes from men valid? If not, are both our families invalid, and could both groups form but one complex? If so, we will have to add the hairy man to Desmond Morris's naked ape. Anything of this nature will absolutely demand an overall revision of our ideas of both physical and social anthropology, and will present a somewhat alarming problem to scientists and religionists alike. This author's personal opinion as to the precise identity of this specimen is, at the moment, not formulated. As a trained zoologist and one who spent many years collecting mammalian and particularly primate specimens for examination, dissection, and preservation in the field and while fresh, we would not presume to make any definite pronouncement upon anything other than a purely generalized overall description of its external appearance. The corpus must be freed from its ice encasement and properly examined first. However, some speculation as to the taxonomic status of this creature, if it finally proves to be real, is perhaps permissible, since we do have detailed measurements and photographs to back it up. It is Heuvelmann's opinion, which he states categorically in his paper, that this body represents the fresh remains of a Neanderthaloid human. Such hominids are currently classed as a subspecies of Homo sapiens, yet Heuvelmann's has named this item Homo pongoides, and thus of full specific rank. Though we suggested that appellation, pongoids, in the first place, we envisaged it either as a subspecific to Homo sapiens, since we have no idea as to the external morphology of the fossil Neanderthaloids, or merely as a possible specific for some other genus of anthropoid. However, this suggestion was purely tentative in that, despite the existence of this specimen, we have no more idea of its anatomy, histology, or physiology than we do of the external morphology of the Neanderthalers. I am therefore officially disassociating my name from that given in Heuvelmann's paper. We are constrained to do this not only because we are personally averse to naming any specimen before it has been physically obtained and properly examined, but also more precisely because we are not convinced that this specimen is Neanderthaloid or even a member of the genus Homo as presently constituted. Further still, it might not even be an anthropoid, but rather a survivor of a line divergent from and possibly lying between the hominid and the pongid branches, but derived from a common ancestor to all three. In the absence of the corpus itself, as of the time of writing, and in view of our total lack of knowledge of the external morphology of any anthropoids other than the living hominids and pongids, we consider it to be most incautious to attempt to identify this specimen as of now, and more especially to confine it within a subspecific title. And anent this, one essential feature of this specimen seems to have been overlooked. What can be seen of the conformation of the face, meaning the front of the head, in no way conforms to any known fossil hominid, apart from the juvenile Australopithecus, and particularly to that of any Neanderthaler of comparable size. There is no prognathicism, virtually no brow ridges. The forehead does not slope acutely. The two teeth that can be seen are infantile. In fact, from what can be assessed of the anatomical structure of the forepart of the skull, this creature is almost as far removed from the standard Neanderthaloid construction as is possible. In these same respects, it shows no more affinity with Homo erectus, Homo habilis, what is known of same, or more especially, such lower types as were once called pithecanthropines, australopithecines, or such like. In fact, if it does prove to be a hominid, by whatever criteria may be decided upon to define that family when and if it is examined, it might well be called Homo pongoides, but it most certainly should not be assigned to the Neanderthal race or complex. Our final conclusion, therefore, is that the specimen we inspected was that of a genuine corpse as opposed to a composite or a construction, and that it is some form of primate. We would categorize it, as of now, as an anthropoid, but whether it is a hominid, a pongid, or a representative of some other previously unsuspected branch of that superfamily, we are not prepared either to say or even to speculate. There are certain firm indications that the specimen examined by Heuvelmann's and this writer, though it has been removed from the place where we saw it, and hidden while a substitute model has been installed, has not been destroyed and may therefore eventually become available for proper scientific examination. Until such time as this is achieved, we advise that it serve only as a pointer to the possible continued existence of at least one kind of fully haired, ultra-primitive anthropoid-like primate, and be used only as a lever to pry open the hitherto hidebound notion that any such thing is impossible. Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.